What's going on, everybody? It's TheZachMichael here. Today, we're going to be talking about how to build your monthly listeners on Spotify. And as I do that, I'm just going to be producing like a lo-fi beat, to be honest. Just kind of feel like making something in that genre today. So that's what we're going to end up making. But let's go ahead and get running into it. Now, the first thing I just want to lead with is for anybody who doesn't know how to build your monthly listeners, especially to get that first 1,000, I just want to kind of give a quick little backstory just about me and some of my experience. That way you know that the advice you're getting from me is actually like, it works. Like I'm not just preaching something that I've never done, etc. I've partnered with lots of artists over the years, producing with them either on individual songs or their whole discographies. And multiple other people have grown to extreme listener bases and just even have built like small cult fan bases, etc. So there's that. In addition to that, I have a couple artistries where I drop instrumentals on like all DSPs, all platforms, and Spotify specifically. I have one lo-fi brand called Sleeping Shark, which as of April passed its first 1,000 monthly listeners with 5 instrumental releases on there. So again, monthly listeners fluctuates. So by the time this video comes out, it may be a different number, it might be higher, might be lower, etc. That's the first thing to remember when it comes to monthly listeners. Is it's a cool metric and it is helpful to build your fan base on Spotify. But be aware that even for the top artists, it fluctuates up and down. So you should never really get too attached. If something gets down for like a month or two, don't get crazy demotivated. Just continue to push through it. But let's go ahead and get into some of my advice on how to grow your monthly listeners. So the first bit of advice is to release music consistently. While there are ways around that, like for instance, there are artists who maybe drop 3 songs a year who have a big monthly listener base, etc. That requires a lot more marketing and a lot more money push most of the time to grow. Whereas if you can drop music consistently, and consistently can mean different things for different people. Like for my lo-fi instrumentals, drop new stuff every single week. But would you need to do that every single week if you're an artist? I don't think so. I think it's really all about just finding something that works for you, like whatever process and speed of getting out music works for you, and just kind of sticking with it long term. I think a lot of people kind of give up when they don't see the results they want instantly. And when it comes to building an audience and building a brand, that sort of thing just takes time. So you have to be patient, you have to be consistent, etc. So that's the first step, is just release music consistently, which I'm sure everyone here is capable of doing. And consistently can mean whatever works for you. So that's the first step. And the reason for that, you release consistently and it brings people back to your page and back to your music, which is crucial. As an upcoming artist, you need to bring people back. You don't want them to just hear one song and then walk away and that be it. You want them to hear your music and come back to listen numerous times over. And if someone maybe doesn't love the first song they heard from you, or even if they do like the first song, they might take more for them to add it on their playlist. So that's why you want to consistently bring people back. So that's the first bits of advice. Let's go on to the next stuff. So another big crucial thing for Spotify monthly listeners is playlisting. Playlisting is a very, very important aspect in the streaming era. And a lot of people think playlisting is pay to play, and in some aspects that can be true, but there are a lot of ways around that. So let's kind of break it down. So first, there are Spotify editorial playlists. Now, Spotify editorial playlists are, in my opinion, some of the best playlists to get on, but they are incredibly challenging. I'm going to keep it totally transparent. There's no easy way, especially for an independent unsigned artist, to make it on an editorial playlist. It's possible and it has happened, but it is significantly lower than if you are with a label. It's one of the incentives that a label can sort of help provide you, is better playlisting spots with playlists that they have more influence over the curators of. But that should not discourage you, because there are lots of big playlists and even small playlists that add up over time that you can get your music on. Now, some of them are set up where you can submit your music and you just, there's different formats of how you submit your music. Some people, like some curators, you literally just DM them with the music. Some have like different forms or different websites where that you can fill out your like music. You can just apply essentially to be on the playlist. Now, I do think this is a very, very useful skill. If you can successfully pitch your music to a lot of playlists, you have a very good chance of growing your listener base on Spotify very organically. It's like playlists are how the majority of people discover new music nowadays. That's definitely one of the key methods. So you want to try to be on playlists, because when someone hears a song they like on a playlist that someone else curated, they will then go add it to their playlist. So that's kind of how you get onto people's personal playlists, which is very, very helpful. Now, me personally, the way I go about playlisting is this. So I like to build relationships with the curators. Is this necessary? Not necessarily. But I do build genuine relationships with the playlisters. Whether they add me on their playlist or not does not impact whether I have the relationship with that curator. There's a lot of people who make playlists that I talk to regularly, that I collaborate with, etc., that have never put me on their playlist, and I have no actual like interest in being on the playlist unless they want me there. I think a lot of people, especially in the music business, try to make relationships with the goal of using that person to get ahead, and that just doesn't work. You can't go into it with the I need to be on this person's playlist. Like, the chances of that are way lower. You have to come into it from a genuine place. You have to come into it where if it happens, it happens. That's how it's gotta be done if you really want to see success from your relationship. So build an actual genuine relationship with the artist or the curator and just let it grow over time. You don't need to be on their playlist the first week you get to know them. You can take some time. You can support them, support their playlists, support their artist endeavors, because a lot of people who make playlists tend to be involved in other things in music as well, whether they're artists themselves or they manage other artists or they're an A&R or something like that. There's usually other things they do outside of playlists. But playlisting is very, very important. Now, you can submit your music to editorial playlists through different platforms, and it's definitely worth it to do that because it does increase your chances of being on those playlists, but it of course can't be guaranteed. I mean, their editorial playlists, they have a limited number of spots, so you can submit there, but I would suggest, especially in the beginning while you're still growing your audience, submit to editorial playlists later on and focus on that. Whereas when you're in the beginning stages, focus on user ran playlists. Even playlists that have like a couple hundred listeners can really, really stack up and can really, really grow. So it's definitely worth it to even look in to ones like that. Not every playlist you submit to needs to be the biggest playlist in the world. It just needs to be a good playlist that has the type of music and the type of listeners you're for. For instance, if you make EDM music, don't submit to lo-fi playlists. If you make, submit to playlists that actually fit the sound that you make. So like when I submit my ambient lo-fi stuff, I'm going to ambient lo-fi playlists. When I do a pop record with another artist, I'm not going to submit to those same playlists. It's all about just kind of knowing, the taste. And every curator picks stuff based on their taste. So you want your stuff to kind of match their playlist, at least to some extent. So playlisting is the next step. And the third crucial step to growing your monthly listener base is actually growing off Spotify. This is something I feel like a lot of upcoming artists neglect, which is actually growing your brand outside of the music platforms. I think a lot of people focus on their iTunes, their Spotify, their titles, etc., instead of actually growing a real organic audience. And the way you can do that, there's so many different ways. I mean, nowadays, one of the most prevalent ways is TikTok. But do you need to grow on TikTok? No. There's also Instagram, there's Twitter, there's YouTube, there's so many other ways. And there's even ways to grow outside of social media. Maybe you grow in your local scene if there's a local scene in your city. Maybe you grow on Reddit or certain Reddit forums or different platforms like that. There's really so many different ways to grow and establish a brand outside of the actual music platforms. And in that case, you actually may see a better conversion rate from first-time listener to long-time listener when they actually can get to know you and know your brand and know what you're about, as opposed to just hearing a good song. It's definitely a crucial step that I think a lot of people kind of neglect. Now, I'm not saying you need to become a crazy content creator. I'm not saying you need to be making 100 pieces of content a week or anything crazy like that. It's really about being organic and having good, strong ideas and building that foundation. Now, of course, every platform does have best practices, but is it necessary that you follow those all the time? Not really. The most important thing is that you're building an audience. Even if it's small, it's something and it'll grow with time. And the more people that grow over time, the more like word of mouth that can come and the more spread that can come. And also, you never know who's listening, who has influence to help you in other ways later on. But you definitely want to try to build your platform in whatever organic way works for you. I think that's a very crucial thing, is make content that makes sense for you and your brand and something that you enjoy doing. I think a lot of people try to force their content and try to do things that don't make sense for them. Like, I know a lot of artists who try to make TikTok dances and they don't work because they're not a dancer and they have no interest in making TikTok dances, but they do because they think that that's what's going to go viral. But the secret to building a listener base is not necessarily chasing that virality off something that you couldn't do long term or you have no interest doing long term, if that makes sense. But these are kind of some of my main advices on how to grow your monthly listener base. So if you guys enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and check out elizabethrecords.net. And if you want to support any of my Spotify / other platform music, I have Relaxed Vibes, which is experimental lo-fi. I have Nature Walk, which is like composed left to center soundscapes. It's very weird, bizarre music. And then I have Sleeping Shark, which is my ambient lo-fi music. And that's the one that I mentioned earlier that just had passed the 1,000 monthly listener plus spot. And that was in April. So we'll see how it is in the future by the time this video comes out, etc. But if you guys enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. Head on over to elizabethrecords.net if you'd like to support me. You can purchase VST expansion banks, drum kits, loop kits, and MIDI kits that'll level up your production there.